Chapter 359. Today, I'm going out to buy some New Year goods. It's almost the new year, so everyone at home is quite busy, so I have to help. Hu Jiao had always been more domineering than her younger sister. Normally, when she met Fong Lao, she would respectfully address him as senior, but at this moment, seeing him actually want to kill Yang Kai, she couldn't help but curse him. Fong Lao's face was livid with anger, but due to the identity of this woman he couldn't act on the spot, so he just calmly said, with his current appearance, "Don't tell me he hasn't become the demon race?" Hu Jiao sneered. If he had become the demon race, would we still be able to stand safely by his side? Are you blind? Fong Lao and Su Lao both froze at the same time, thinking about it for a moment and also feeling a little confused. Yang Kai's current state was completely beyond their scope of understanding. Under the influence of that kind of murderous aura, it was impossible for him to have any semblance of sanity. But looking at his eyes, they were clearly calm and steady, without the slightest trace of malevolence that should have become the demon race. Besides, you only saw him kill Qingming. Have you ever thought about what that old man did to him? Hu Jiao asked. Fong Lao's mouth twitched for a moment before he finally said, "This old man only believes what he sees." Hu Jiao sneered again and again. Half a month ago, Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court suffered a big loss at his hands, and today, they left the front line ahead of time and returned here. I think you can guess what their purpose is. Even if Yang Kai really killed them, it was out of self-defense. These people who died can only blame themselves. What does it have to do with him? Is it possible that when someone comes to kill you, you have to stretch out your neck for them to cut off? You're not allowed to resist? Guan Qilu also nodded. Young lady is right. Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court not only disobeyed orders, but also returned here ahead of time and attempted to kill fellow Daoists. I ask young Lord Xiang to uphold justice. I ask young Lord Xiang to uphold justice. Fong Ziqi's mouth curled into a smile. He also raised his voice and shouted. Xiang Chu smiled lightly and said, "If this is really the case, then this Xiang will naturally not shirk his responsibility and will severely punish the people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court as a warning to others." Pausing for a moment, Xiang Chu continued, "But this is only your guess. You came back with me, so this Xiang didn't see how things developed. Naturally, you didn't see it. How about this? Let the two parties involved in the conflict tell us what happened. What do you think?" "I have no objection." Yang Kai chuckled. "It's good that this friend understands," Xiang Chu nodded, turning his head and saying, "Old man Fong, old man Su, bring those who are still alive here." Yes. The two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters flew out. Not long after, all the survivors were brought back. Many of these people were seriously injured. Falling to the ground, Xie Rong and Li Fu were not in such a sorry state, but their bodies could not help but sway. She stole a glance at Yang Kai. The two of them retracted their gazes in panic. The other young disciples didn't even dare to look at Yang Kai. The battle just now had scared them out of their wits. Even their own elders had been killed by Yang Kai in a single blow. How could these young people have the ability to resist? "Xie Rong, Li Fu," Xiang Chu called out softly. Xie Rong was trembling like a sieve, replying quite stutteringly while Li Fu could only mutter a soft N. Xiang Chu's brow furrowed slightly before he suddenly asked, "You two should have seen everything just now, right? Then tell the truth, no matter how big or small. If there is even the slightest bit of falsehood or concealment, you know the consequences." Xiang Chu chuckled. Xie Rong and Li Fu glanced at each other, neither of them daring to speak. Hu Jiao sneered, a guilty conscience. Xiang Chu rubbed his forehead and smiled bitterly. "Jiao before the matter is settled, don't say such things." Hu Jiao coldly snorted, "Young Lord Xiang, I don't want to remind you again, please don't call me that, okay?" "My apologies, my tongue slipped." Xiang Chu didn't show the slightest embarrassment and cupped his fists repeatedly before turning to Xie Rong and Li Fu and saying, "If you don't dare speak, then this young lord will consider you guilty and kill you right now." Xie Rong and Li Fu couldn't help trembling as they stared at Xiang Chu in horror. Xiang Chu then continued, "But if you have any grievances, this young lord can also uphold justice for you. Hearing this sentence, everyone from Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang couldn't help but frown. Xiangchu's words didn't sound like there was anything wrong with them, but after carefully pondering over them, they actually had a profound meaning. Sure enough, Xie Rong and Li Fu glanced at each other and their panicked emotions gradually stabilized, as if they had found a backer. Li Fu nodded. Xie Rong, you speak. Xie Rong swallowed hard, grit his teeth, and nodded, good. Taking a deep breath, not daring to look at Yang Kai, Xie Rong said in a low and sorrowful voice, today, our two sects were fighting on Taifang Mountain and chased down a group of ash-gray cloud evil land cultivator. After killing them, we discovered that we were not far from the camp, so instead of meeting up with young Lord Xiang, we simply returned directly. Nonsense. Hu Jiao Air couldn't help but shout, since the beginning of the battle, I haven't seen any of you. How could you have chased down a group of ash-gray cloud evil land cultivator? It was clearly premeditated and you simply returned directly. We didn't. Young Lord Xiang, everything I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can go to the western foot of the mountain and investigate. There should still be some corpses left there. Xiangchu nodded slightly, I'll investigate. For now, I'll just assume you chased after the enemy, but not being able to return in time is also the fault of your two sects. I'll punish you severely for this. Do you have any complaints? Xie Rong and Li Fu shook their heads at the same time. The Hu sisters were so angry that their chests heaved up and down. Xiangchu seemed to have handled this matter well, but for him to so casually dismiss it, it was obvious he was siding with the people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. Continue. Xiangchu motioned. After we returned here with our respective elders, we were preparing to wait for young Lord Xiang's return before reporting, but while we were resting, we suddenly felt a towering evil aura. A towering evil aura? Xiangchu raised his brow. And we have never felt this kind of evil aura before. The elders of our two sects thought it was some kind of powerful demon and led us to meet it. However, when we followed this aura to its source, we were shocked to discover that this demon was actually what? It was actually that person. Which person? Xiangchu asked. The person the Hu sisters brought back a few days ago. Xie Rong grit his teeth and replied in a deep voice. Xiangchu glanced over at Yang Kai, only to see the latter smile back at him. Yang Kai's smile was flat and his expression was calm, causing Xiangchu to be stunned. And then? Xiangchu turned his eyes and asked. Then, that person attacked us like a madman. The elders of our two sects were unable to stop him and countless disciples were killed or injured. In the end, two elders sacrificed their lives. Only then were we able to save our lives. Xie Rong paused for a moment before pounding his chest and stamping his feet in grief. I ask young Lord Xiang to seek justice for our two sects and avenge our dead brothers, sisters, and elders. Li Fu also burst into tears, wiping the corners of her eyes. Choking with sobs, she said, I ask young Lord Xiang to seek justice. If I do not avenge this grievance, I am not a man. Listening to their pleas, the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall gnashed their teeth in anger. Their hearts were filled with hatred. Xiangchu was silent for a moment before saying, Get up. If young Lord Xiang cannot seek justice for us and kill that demon, we will never kneel again. We will kneel and never get up. Xie Rong and Li Fu kowtowed. Xiangchu showed a displeased expression and said, The situation is not clear yet, these are only your side's words. If you wish to kneel, then kneel here. Xiangchu raised his eyes. Looking at Yang Kai with a smile, he said, This friend, what do you want to say? This Xiang is not the kind of person who cannot distinguish between black and white. If you have something to say, this Xiang is willing to listen. The Hu sisters immediately turned to look at Yang Kai nervously. Yang Kai shrugged and said indifferently, No. Yang Kai. Hu Jiao Air's beautiful face suddenly paled as she nervously grabbed his arm. Xiangchu was also quite surprised and stared at him in surprise, seemingly not having expected him to not defend himself. Looking at his calm expression, Xiangchu faintly felt a bad premonition. daring to not defend himself, and not showing any signs of nervousness. Obviously he was not afraid of anything happening to him. Was this person arrogant or confident? Yang Kai, say a few words, they are slandering you, how can you not say anything? Hu Mei Air also became anxious. Yang Kai smiled faintly. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. The Hu sisters' expression froze for a moment before they suddenly remembered that even if Yang Kai tried to defend himself, it would be useless. His current state was enough for everyone here to classify him as an evil demon. Now that everyone was at war with the ash-gray cloud evil land, what did the appearance of an evil demon here mean? Anyone could kill him, so even if it was Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court who attacked first, Yang Kai wouldn't be able to justify himself. Defending himself would only be a waste of saliva. His face gradually sinking, Yang Kai sneered, "Whether I am a human or a demon, it is not up to outsiders to judge." Xiangchu's eyes couldn't help narrowing as he stared at Yang Kai. After a long time, he finally said, "Does this friend mean that this Xiang is not qualified to judge you? Are you worthy?" Yang Kai looked at him indifferently. "Impudence!" Fang Lao angrily shouted, "The Xiang family is a first-class family, and the young lord is the one in charge of this place. Who do you think you are to dare speak to the young lord in such a manner?" "A first-class family, what great prestige!" Yang Kai laughed. "Today, this young lord will let you see the prestige of a first-class family." Xiangchu was also angered by Yang Kai's words and coldly snorted, "Fang Lao, Su Lao, capture this evil demon." The two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters immediately responded. "You dare." The Hu sisters immediately stepped forward, their delicate bodies blocking in front of Yang Kai. Xiangchu's expression sank as his eyes flashed a gloomy light, taking a deep breath and saying, "Two young ladies, if you don't want to be hurt, stand back. If you insist on remaining stubborn, this young lord will be able to accuse your two families of colluding with evil demons and arrest you as well." "What a big hat!" Guan Qi stepped forward and sneered, "Young Lord Xiang, is this how your Xiang family handles matters?" Xiangchu's expression became gloomy. "This is how I, Xiangchu, handle things. If evil demons are not dealt with, people will not be at ease." Chapter 360. The people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were originally in a miserable state, but when they heard this, they immediately cheered up. Xie Rong and Li Fu also stared at Yang Kai with a smug and hateful expression, as if they could already see him at the end of his road. "Well said." A burst of laughter came from not far away. Everyone was shocked and quickly turned their heads to look in that direction. 100 zhang away, a few cloud-treading foals were galloping towards them like the wind, their feet not touching the ground. Cloud-treading colts, third-order monster beast. Although they weren't very strong, they had great endurance and speed. On top of that, their temperament was docile, making them the most suitable mounts. Each cloud-treading colt could travel a few thousand kilometers in a day, and a good one could easily travel 10,000 kilometers in a day. This kind of speed was even faster than some Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters and didn't require Yuan Qi to fly. Therefore, the great families would generally domesticate cloud-treading colts as a means of transportation. However, this kind of monster beast was very rare and each one was worth hundreds of thousands of silvers. Apart from first-class forces, no other force could afford to raise one. To some extent, cloud-treading colts represented strength and identity. 3 cloud-treading colts had arrived. The leader of this group looked about the same age as Xiangchu and was also quite handsome. Behind him were 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th or 8th stage masters. The distance of 1,000 meters was covered in an instant. "After not seeing you for a few months, Brother Xiang's temper seems to have grown." The leading young man laughed. Arriving in front of everyone, this young man didn't dismount and instead just sat atop his cloud-treading colt, looking down at everyone. However, when that pair of eyes looked towards Yang Kai, there was a slightly dignified and surprised look in them. This kind of demonic aura was something he naturally couldn't ignore. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind him also frequently glanced at Yang Kai. Secretly circulating their yuan qi, they prepared themselves for the unexpected. This guy is called Nanxing. Fang Ziki knew that Yang Kai was somewhat ignorant and quickly explained. He is the young lord of the first-class Nan family. His status is equal to Xiang Chu. The Nan family and the Xiang family had been married for several generations, so the relationship between the two families had always been very good. Be careful of him, he's much more overbearing than Xiang Chu, and he's also very difficult to deal with. Yes. Yang Kai nodded slightly. Xiang Chu should be the kind of insidious person who would say one thing on the surface and another behind his back, while this Nanxing should be a straightforward person. Xiang Chu's livid expression finally eased a lot when he saw this person, smiling as he cupped his fists and said, "Big brother Nan, why you here? Weren't you on the battlefront a few hundred miles away?" The Xiang clan was in charge of Taifang Mountain's battlefront, while the Nan clan was in charge of another battlefront a few hundred li away. They were both first-class families, so they both had the qualifications to do so. Nanxing grinned. He jumped off the cloud-treading mare and said, "Didn't the final battle end 2 days ago? The central capital's 8 great families said that we can go back now. When we passed by here, we felt an unusual aura, so we came over to take a look. I didn't expect there to be such a good show. Why haven't you left yet?" While speaking, Nanxing swept his eyes over Yang Kai. Xiang Chu's expression became slightly awkward as he said, "Today was the last day of our mission. I wanted to tell everyone the good news after returning, but something unexpected happened here, so I didn't have time to tell everyone." The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were all startled. The final battle had ended 2 days ago. If they hadn't inadvertently overheard this from Nanxing, they would likely still be in the dark. How could the Ash-Gray Cloud Evil Lands cultivator attack their camp 2 days after the final battle? What kind of commander would do such a thing? However, at this critical moment, Yang Kai's camp had encountered a problem. There was clearly something fishy going on here. In an instant, everyone understood many key points. An accident. Nanxing nodded slightly, frowning as he stared towards Yang Kai, casually pointing towards him. "Is it him?" Xiang Chu nodded. "Demon Lord, heh, interesting." Nanxing pinched his chin with one hand as he stared at Yang Kai like he was sizing up a commodity. Such a young demon actually has such a rich evil qi. It seems the secret art he cultivates is not simple. "It's not simple," Xiang Chu said solemnly. Nanxing was slightly stunned. He had rarely seen Xiang Chu so dignified, so he couldn't help asking curiously, "What's wrong?" 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Second Stage Masters were killed by him. What? Nanxing paled. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind him were also shocked. "Brother Xiang, you're not joking, right?" Nanxing froze for a moment before shaking his head and smiling bitterly, his face filled with disbelief. He seems to only be a Yuan Qi Boundary 6th Stage cultivator. How could he possibly kill 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters? "The corpses are right here. How could I be joking with you? All the corpses here were his handiwork." Xiang Chu smiled bitterly. One of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind Nanxing also stepped forward and whispered, "Young Master, this person cannot be underestimated. His vitality is extremely strong, and that black dragon beside him is also very strange." Seeing his family's Immortal Ascension Boundary Master act so solemnly, Nanxing quickly put away his frivolous expression and asked softly, "If I were to face him, what are my chances of winning?" The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master pursed his lips, not knowing what to say. "Tell me the truth. No chance of winning." The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master braced himself and said. Nanxing sucked in a cold breath and finally re-examined Yang Kai. Even against the younger generation of the central capital's 8 great families, there were only a few people who could give him no chance of winning, but now there was a young demon lord with such attainments. Didn't that mean his aptitude and strength were extraordinary? How could he compare to the central capital's 8 great masters? Narrowing his eyes slightly, Nanxing quickly said, "Such a dangerous person, we should just kill him. Leaving him alive will only cause us endless trouble in the future." Xiang Chu nodded. "I also think so." "Then what are you hesitating for?" Nanxing asked, puzzled. Xiangchu smiled wryly. Nanxing glanced at his expression, then turned his head and asked, "Are these people trying to interfere?" I'm not doing my job properly." Xiangchu nodded helplessly. "Who dares interfere? Kill them all." Nanxing coldly snorted, "Daring to ally with this demon lord at this time, even if we kill them all, no one will dare say anything." The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall all paled. All of them stared vigilantly at Nanxing. Originally, the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters on Xiangchu's side were more than enough to wipe them out, but now Nanxing had brought two more masters with him. If they really fought, no one here would survive. "Brother Xiang, are you still going to show mercy at this time?" Nanxing tilted his head towards Xiangchu, a sneer forming on his face. Xiangchu smiled wryly. "There are some people I can't bear to kill." As he spoke, he looked towards the Hu sisters with a burning gaze. His eyes were filled with undisguised affection. The Xiang and Nan families had been allied through marriage for several generations. Xiangchu and Nanxing had played together since childhood and were as close as brothers. How could Nanxing not know what Xiangchu was thinking? Nanxing also knew Xiangchu's personality and methods. Thinking about it for a moment, Nanxing understood a lot of things. There were some things that were inconvenient for Xiangchu to say, but Nanxing could. However, just passing by, he actually wanted to help this little brat. This little brat had several wives at home. Yet he still wasn't satisfied. Nanxing felt a burst of depression in his heart. However, this pair of twins was quite interesting, no wonder he was tempted. Thinking so, Nanxing didn't try to stay out of this matter, casually pointing to the Hu sisters and asking, "Two girls, do you want to die or live?" Hu Jiao sneered, "If you can live, who would want to die? Come out, this matter has nothing to do with you, Brother Xiang only wants to kill that little brat." Nanxing nodded slightly and immediately made the decision. The Hu sisters shook their heads and stood firmly beside Yang Kai. Nanxing was stunned and couldn't help cursing in his heart. The two women that bastard Xiangchu liked already had sweethearts? No wonder it was so difficult to deal with. So that's how it is. At this moment, Nanxing understood everything. It turned out that the real deal was hidden here. Straightening his face, Nanxing asked, "Do you want to save his life?" The Hu sisters' faces were filled with displeasure, but after a long time, they nodded slightly. "That's even better." Nanxing laughed. "You too, marry my brother Xiang and I, Nanxing, will protect his life for you." As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Xiangchu waved his hand again and again. "Big brother Nan, this won't do. I am indeed interested in these two girls, but killing a demon is a big matter, how can we mix it up?" Nanxing's expression became serious as he said, "Why not? You can decide things here, and I can decide things for you. Let's do as you say." Turning his face, he looked at the Hu sisters and asked, "What do the two girls think?" "Wishful thinking." Hu Jiao quickly and decisively refused. Nanxing's face sank, a trace of arrogance and disdain flashing across his eyes as he said, "You two seem to be just disciples of second-class sects, right? My brother Xiang comes from a first-class family, he has both power and influence, and he is also handsome. Do you think marrying him would be wrong for you two? You're just two trivial women. What's the point of pretending to be virtuous? Sooner or later you'll have to marry. If you don't want to marry a first-class family's young lord, who do you want to marry? My brother Xiang taking a fancy to you is your luck." Hearing Nanxing's harsh words, the Hu sisters were immediately enraged. "So be it, either he dies, or you two marry my brother Xiang and I will protect his life. As for which choice to make, you decide for yourself." Nanxing was extremely overbearing and did not give the Hu sisters any room to maneuver, sneering as he said, "You only have a stick of incense worth of time. When the time is up, even if you beg me, it will be useless. If anyone else dares to interfere and cause trouble, they will all be killed without mercy." Finished speaking, Nanxing lowered his head and stood aside, watching coldly. From the beginning to the end, Xiangchu had only said one sentence, and after that, there was no further movement. Now that things had developed to this point, even if the Hu sisters were stupid, they would still be able to understand. So, your purpose was this. Hu Jiao looked at Xiang Chu contemptuously. Everything you did was to target Yang Kai, and then wait for an opportunity to blackmail us, right? Xiang Chu's expression remained indifferent as he said, Jiao if you think so, then you've misunderstood me. Nansheng couldn't help but roll his eyes, thinking that this bastard was still so pretentious. If it were him, he would have already forced himself on her. A woman from a second-class sect, so what if he did? What could he do? Misunderstanding or not, you know clearly in your heart. Hu Jiao sneered. Chapter 361. Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall had gone through thick and thin together for the past few months, so of the original 100 or so disciples, only a dozen or so remained. The remaining dozen or so were of one mind. Seeing Nansheng and Xiang Chu oppressing the Hu sisters like this, how could they not be angry? Fang Ziki sneered as he stared at Nansheng. Young Lord Nan, young Lord Xiang, can a first-class family decide the life and death of a second-class sect's disciple at will? What do you have to say? Nansheng snorted as he stared at Fang Ziki with a smile, not putting him in his eyes at all. If that's the case, then I have nothing to say. Then shut your mouth. Nansheng flicked the dust off his sleeves, his expression indifferent. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not having a good background. Why do you think this world's sects are divided into 3 grades and 9 grades? It's because people like you clearly recognize the difference between your status and mine. If you were from a first-class force, this young lord wouldn't be able to bully you, right? Nansheng chuckled as he spoke, as if he didn't feel there was anything wrong with his words, a sense of superiority arising from his noble background. Continuing, he continued, if you were from a super force, this young lord wouldn't even have time to curry favor with you. The weak are prey to the strong. This is the truth. It's funny you can't see it clearly. Wait until one day you have the strength and status to bully me. If you dare to bully me, I promise I won't complain. Such a day will come. Fang Ziki said with a gloomy expression. Nansheng curled his lips disdainfully. Yang Kai, who had been watching from the sidelines, didn't speak. He didn't take any action, just quietly watching the two sides quarrel. Even now, he didn't express any opinion, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. However, the 4 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Nan and Xiang families were constantly on guard against him. Of all the young men, only Yang Kai was unfathomable. Although he was only a Yuan Qi boundary 6th stage cultivator, his vitality and Yuan Qi were extremely strange, so they couldn't really fight him. It was impossible for them to figure out his true strength. Yang Kai had been observing for so long because he wanted to see how many people here he could make friends with and how many of them were true to themselves. As the saying goes, a long road tests a horse's strength. Time doesn't necessarily reveal one's true feelings, but one's heart and mind. It was difficult to see a person's true character and temperament unless it was the most difficult time. If at this time Blood Battle Gang and Storm House chose to remain silent and not meddle in his affairs, Yang Kai wouldn't be surprised at all. Playing it safe, this was the way to deal with things. At present, the Xiang clan and the Nan clan held the absolute advantage. The Blood Group and the Storm House were simply no match for them. If they continued to act tough, they were afraid that only destruction awaited them. What made Kai Yang feel gratified was that there were 3 people he cared about. The Hu sisters and Fang Ziji didn't have the slightest intention of retreating because of the other party's strength. They still firmly stood in front of him. Feeling warmth in his heart, Yang Kai's face bloomed into a smile as he slowly walked forward and placed his hand on the Hu sisters' shoulders. His eyes swept over the 4 immortal ascension boundary masters in front of him. Looking at Xiang Chu and Nansheng, Yang Kai grinned and whispered to the Hu sisters, "Don't worry about me. If I want to leave, no one can stop me." Hu Jiao and Hu Mei pretty faces lit up slightly, although they didn't know where Yang Kai's confidence came from. But hearing him speak so firmly, they didn't have the slightest doubt. On the other hand, Nansheng and Xiang Chu's expressions couldn't help sinking. Fang Lao sneered, "Little brat, with the 4 of us here, you dare say such big words? Do you want to try?" Yang Kai looked at him provocatively. Fang Lao's eyes flashed as he stared at Yang Kai, but to his disappointment, He didn't see the slightest panic in Yang Kai's eyes. It seemed that this young man really did have the strength to escape safely. "Surround him!" Nanxing shouted. Yang Kai's impudence and arrogance had completely angered him. Never before had a disciple from a second-class sect dared to look at him with such disdainful eyes. This kind of gaze was like a needle that pierced into his heart. As the young lord of a first-class family, he naturally had his own pride and self-satisfaction. As soon as Nanxing's words fell, the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind him flew out and surrounded Yang Kai, forming a triangle with the two Xiang family masters. Even though he was surrounded by 4 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th or 8th stage masters, Yang Kai still wore a calm expression, but his eyes were slightly more dignified than before. In his current state, he could safely escape from 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, but if there were 4 of them, he would have to pay a heavy price. This was just Yang Kai's estimation. If he actually did it, there would be some discrepancies. However, as long as he wasn't killed in a single blow, Yang Kai was confident he could escape. "You want to run? Father wants to see how you run." Nanxing stared at Yang Kai fiercely and shouted, "For old men, if any of these second-class sect disciples don't know what's good for them, just kill them, there's no need to worry." The 4 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from the Xiang family and Nan family responded in unison. A loud and clear dragon roar rang out as the black flood dragon that had been hovering above Yang Kai's head slowly began to move, its gong-sized eyes exuding a cold light. Nanxing glanced over at the Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall Masters and sneered, "I'll give you 10 breaths to leave this demon's side, otherwise, when we start fighting, Xiang Chu frowned and quickly said, "Two young ladies, don't be so obstinate. It's you who have gone too far." Hu Jiao shouted. Xiang Chu's expression couldn't help becoming cold. He really did have feelings for the Hu sisters, but it wasn't the kind of love that would last until death. As the young lord of a first-class family, what kind of stunning beauty had he not seen? Beautiful women were just a kind of entertainment for him. What he enjoyed was the process of pursuing and conquering them. But at this moment, Xiang Chu suddenly realized that he would never be able to conquer this pair of beautiful sisters, and couldn't help feeling annoyed. His anger quickly turned into resentment, and after coldly snorting, he no longer said anything. 10 breaths have passed. Nanxing calmly shouted, his eyes sweeping over the crowd. Casually saying, "Begin." The 4 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters gathered nearby suddenly felt their yuan qi surge as they glared at the crowd. At that moment, suddenly, an extremely loud and clear cry of an eagle came from the sky. This eagle cry was extremely sharp and seemed to contain some kind of inexplicable power. Even the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters who heard it couldn't help but frown and hurriedly look up. High up in the sky, they couldn't tell how many thousands of meters high. A golden light was shining brightly. This golden light was incomparably pure, and the reflection was so dazzling that it was difficult to open one's eyes. This golden light hovered in the sky above. Above everyone's heads, it continued to hover while emitting an eagle cry. Yang Kai's expression suddenly became strange. Staring at this golden light, Yang Kai's expression constantly changed. The battle that was on the verge of breaking out had suddenly been disrupted by the sudden appearance of this golden eagle. What a handsome eagle! Nanxing's eyes flashed brilliantly as he couldn't help but praise. Although this golden eagle was several thousand meters in the sky, none of the people present had ordinary eyesight, so naturally they could see it clearly. A golden eagle? Su Lao of the Xiang family suddenly frowned, vaguely thinking of something. This young lord has decided to capture it and raise it. Nanxing laughed. Such a handsome eagle, if he could raise one, he would gain a lot of face. In the future, when he went out, he would take it with him and train it. Perhaps it would come in handy in the future. Hearing him say this, Yang Kai couldn't help smiling contemptuously and sarcastically said, "You can't raise it." Nanxing glanced over at him casually and sneered, not bothering to say anything, simply asking, "Have you ever seen such a strange beast?" Su Lao pondered for a moment. Su Lao frowned and said, "I seem to have heard of it." "Where did you hear it from?" Xiangchu was also excited and quickly asked. Su Lao frowned and racked his brains, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remember. High up in the sky, the golden eagle's cries suddenly became more intense, as if it had found something. Immediately, it swooped down, leaving a trail of golden light behind it as it rushed straight towards the place where everyone was gathered. Nansheng, who had been wondering how to catch this eagle, was overjoyed upon seeing this and grinned. Interesting, did this strange beast find this young lord familiar at first sight and deliberately come here to seek shelter? Xiangchu also smiled slightly and said, since Big Brother Nan is so refined, this little brother won't compete with you. Nansheng smiled and glanced over at Yang Kai. Boy, I'll let you live a little longer, wait for this young lord to catch this eagle. As you wish. Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders and assumed a posture of watching from the sidelines. Yang Kai, take this opportunity to run, Hu Mei Er quietly whispered. Yang Kai smiled and shook his head. What are you still doing here? Hu Jiao Er looked at him anxiously and worriedly said, once they catch that eagle, they'll immediately come to deal with you. They won't have a chance. Yang Kai chuckled, his expression relaxed. The Hu sisters were suspicious, not knowing what Yang Kai was trying to do. A moment later, the golden eagle descended, and when it was only a few dozen meters above the crowd, Nansheng suddenly soared up into the sky, his face filled with relief and excitement as he stretched out his hand and sent a palm strike towards the eagle. Unexpectedly, not only was the eagle handsome and powerful, its strength was also not low. With a flap of its wings, a golden light shot towards Nansheng. Nansheng's expression changed and he hurriedly dodged, immediately shouting excitedly, Fifth Order Monster Beast. Second Elder, help me. A Fifth Order flying monster beast, this was a real treasure. An ordinary Fifth Order monster beast probably wouldn't be of much use, but one that could fly was a different story. Whether it was used to investigate the enemy or to track them, it would be a great asset and could even be used in battle. If they could catch this monster beast, Nansheng's strength would also soar. After witnessing the eagle's ability, Xiangchu couldn't help feeling a little moved, secretly regretting that he had been too generous just now. Such an eagle was much more precious than many precious treasures, but what was said couldn't be undone. Even if Xiangchu regretted it, he couldn't snatch it away, so he could only watch helplessly. Chapter 362. The golden eagle's wings were more than 10 meters long and its claws were as hard as steel. Compared to ordinary artifacts, these claws were not inferior at all. On top of that, it seemed to be innately capable of using some kind of beast skill. The golden light it shot out was also quite extraordinary. Although Nansheng was also one of the best masters in the Yuan-Chi realm, facing such a flying monster beast, he wasn't completely confident he could capture it, so after witnessing its abilities, he immediately asked the two masters he had brought with him for help. The two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters didn't hesitate and immediately acted. Two streaks of light shot towards the golden eagle. Although they weren't powerful, they were more than enough to prevent the golden eagle from spreading its wings. You can't. The Xiang family Immortal Ascension Boundary Master, Su Lao's expression suddenly changed as he finally remembered where this golden eagle had come from and hurriedly called out. Nansheng and the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from the Nan family couldn't help frowning, not knowing what had just happened. Although they were confused, their hands didn't stop moving. With two loud bangs, the golden eagle was struck by the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters' attacks and its huge body was sent tumbling through the air several times before nearly falling to the ground. Although it was a Fifth Order monster beast, it was still only equivalent to an Yuan-Chi realm cultivator, so how could it possibly block the attack of two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters? After being delayed like this, Nansheng couldn't help but see hope of capturing it alive. Letting out a hearty laugh, he shot towards the golden eagle like a bolt of lightning and stretched out his hand to grab it. The Xiang family's Su Lao hurriedly rushed in front of Nansheng and shouted, "Young Lord Nan, you can't." As he shouted, he lightly patted Nansheng's shoulder, pushing him back. The golden eagle's clear cry sounded again, but this time it seemed to be a bit angry and hurried. The golden eagle's figure shot straight up into the sky and in the blink of an eye flew a few thousand meters into the air. What the hell? Nanxing could have easily captured the golden eagle alive, but at the last moment his plan had been foiled by Su Lao, causing him to fly into a rage as he gloomily glared at Su Lao. Turning to Xiang Chu, he asked, "Brother Xiang, shouldn't you give me an explanation?" Xiang Chu also frowned, not understanding why this immortal ascension boundary master from his family had suddenly gone mad. He frowned and asked, "Elder Su, what happened?" Cold sweat dripped down Elder Su's forehead as he raised his head to look at the eagle in the sky. He cupped his fists and said, "Mr. Nan, I'm sorry to offend you." Nanxing coldly snorted. His face was filled with displeasure as he said, "Tell me, why did you stop me?" Su Lao wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "This eagle has an owner." "He's taken?" Nanxing was startled for a moment before he suddenly sneered, "It's even better to have a master. My Nan family and brother Xiang's Xiang family are both first-class families. Could it be that he couldn't get an eagle that he had set his eyes on? Tell me, whose eagle is this? Why don't they just offer it to me?" Su Lao's face turned pale, and his expression became more and more frightened. Xiang Chu seemed to have noticed something and took a deep breath. "Old man Su, do you know something about this?" Su Lao's expression was as if he had just lost his parents. His eyes swept over the disciples of Blood Group and Stormhouse, but this time he didn't look at them with the same disdain as before. Instead, he looked at them with a serious and frightened expression. Turning his head, Su Lao stared at the other three Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters and said bitterly, "Fifth Order Monster Beast. Golden Profound Eagle, don't you remember anything?" When the three Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters heard him say this, they couldn't help feeling a bit confused. Su Lao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Should I say you're all ignorant, or have you forgotten? Nearly 20 years ago, within the territory of the Great Han Dynasty, there were also several such eagles. Nearly 20 years ago, in the minds of the three Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, they couldn't help recalling what had happened in the past. Suddenly, their expressions changed. One of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from the Nan family blurted out, "Silver Blood Golden Feather Eagle?" Silver Blood Golden Feather Eagle. As soon as this name came out, all the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters present felt a chill run down their spines. Fang Lao was even more stunned as he muttered, "The Yang family's Silver Blood Golden Feather Eagle?" Su Lao nodded heavily, quickly replying, It should be the Yang family's Silver Blood Golden Feather Eagle. But how could it appear now? Isn't there still a few years before it appears?" "I'm afraid something happened to the Yang family, so the Silver Blood Golden Feather Eagle appeared ahead of time," Su Lao boldly speculated. The three Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters didn't conceal anything when they spoke of this, nor did they deliberately lower their voices, so no matter who it was, everyone present could clearly hear what they were saying. The young disciples of the second-class sects were confused, but Xiang Chu and Nanxing understood, glancing at each other, both of them feeling their scalps go numb. "What are they talking about?" Fang Ziki frowned and asked softly. "Uncle Lu, do you know?" Hu Jiao looked at Guan Qi curiously. Guan Qi glanced over at Yang Kai thoughtfully and couldn't help smiling bitterly, nodding. The older generation should be able to understand. "Tell us more about it." Hu Jiao didn't understand why a trivial fifth-order monster beast would cause the Xiang family and Nan family's people to treat it so seriously. Even if a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master appeared, they wouldn't be so surprised, right? Guan Qi knew that it was impossible for them to fight now. The appearance of this eagle meant that in the near future, the entire Great Han Dynasty would be in turmoil, so his expression relaxed a lot as he asked, "Do you know the central capital's Yang family?" Everyone nodded. The Yang family was the head of the 8 great families. Who hadn't heard of them? The Yang family has a rule, that is, when their younger generation is still young, they will all be sent out to experience the outside world for a period of 10 years. During this time, all the Yang family's disciples are not allowed to borrow any of the Yang family's strength, nor are they allowed to reveal their identities. The Yang family also allows them to temper themselves outside. After 10 years, these Yang family's disciples will all be summoned back to compete for the position of the next Yang family patriarch. In 10 years, a person's change is very great, especially for the younger generation. The Yang family's young lords have been out for 10 years without any news, so it is very troublesome to find them. So the Yang family came up with a very special method to find and recall these scattered Yang family's disciples. What method? That method is to use the monster beast. Guanqi Lu pointed his finger to the sky, the Yang family's silver blood golden feather eagle. This flying monster beast has been raised with the Yang family's blood essence since childhood, so it is very sensitive to the Yang family's bloodline. As long as there is a Yang family disciple within a certain range, it can accurately find them. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help feeling slightly moved. The Yang family's silver blood golden feather eagle had appeared here. Didn't this mean that one of the Yang family's disciples was here? Who could this person be? Guanqi Lu gave Yang Kai a meaningful look before continuing. There are only a dozen or so silver blood golden feather eagles in this world, and all of them belong to the Yang family. The Yang family regards these exotic beasts as precious treasures, and except for when they are searching for important members of their family, they never release them. However, once a silver blood golden feather eagle appears, it means that the Yang family is recalling its scattered disciples, which also means the Yang family's inheritance war is about to begin. The Yang family's inheritance war? Feng Ziki raised his brow, seemingly quite interested in this topic. The Yang family's young lords rely on their 10 years of experience outside to gather helpers and allies to compete for the position of the Yang family's next patriarch. The last Yang family inheritance war had taken place 18 years ago, and many of its members had died, but many more had become famous in that war. The Yang family's inheritance war is a great reshuffle of the world's great forces, so many people will participate. If you're interested and think you have the strength, you can also participate. When Guanqi Lu said this, the people from the Xiang family and Nan family didn't interrupt. The other disciples from the second-class forces who had gathered here also listened attentively. This kind of important secret wasn't something they could hear casually. After Guanqi Lu finished speaking, the large crowd fell silent for a long time, no one making a sound. Nansheng's face was even more ashen. Just now, he had shamelessly boasted that he wanted the owner of the golden feather eagle to hand it over, but after learning that this was a strange beast raised by the Yang family, how could he dare be greedy? No wonder Su Lao had been so anxious to stop him. It turned out that he had remembered something from the past. Nansheng secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he and his two elders hadn't injured the golden feather eagle just now, otherwise, if the Yang family had seen this, it was hard to say what would have happened. This strange beast was rare and precious, and the Yang family was domineering and overbearing. If they had really injured it, they wouldn't have been able to settle the matter with just compensation. After a moment, Su Lao turned to Guanqi Lu and cupped his fists. This friend's explanation is very detailed. There are many details that even this old master doesn't understand. Guanqi Lu sneered. What happened many years ago? Who doesn't know? With such an incident happening, Su Lao also intended to ease the tension between the two sides, so he had only offered a few words of praise. If Guanqi Lu knew about this matter, how could he not? However, Guanqi Lu didn't accept his kindness at all, coldly spitting back at him, causing Su Lao to roll his eyes. Xiang Chu asked suspiciously, "It's just that? I remember that the Yang family dismissed the current generation of direct descendants 5 or 6 years ago. Isn't it less than 10 years? It was precisely because it hadn't been 10 years that no one thought that this eagle was the Yang family's silver blood golden feather eagle. If a few more years had passed, when the whole world was paying attention to the Yang family's movements, the appearance of this golden feather eagle would definitely have been recognized." Nansheng also nodded slightly. "I've also heard about this matter. Could this be some other monster beast that's just similar to the golden feather eagle?" Su Lao sighed. "That's why I said that the Yang family must have encountered some kind of accident that caused them to recall their direct descendants so early. There's no need to doubt, this is the Yang family's golden feather eagle." Then, Xiang Chu's eyes swept over the crowd, but when his gaze swept over Yang Kai, he couldn't help narrowing his eyes slightly, quickly turning back, pinching his nose as he asked, "In other words, there is a young Master Yang here? Countless people were immediately on tenterhooks as they scanned their surroundings. The two groups of people were in conflict and were about to fight to the death, but at such a tense and important juncture, they suddenly learned that among this group of friends and foes, there was a character that they couldn't afford to offend. If this young Master Yang was a friend, then it would naturally be fine, but if he was an enemy... Chapter 363. Thinking so, no one could remain calm. The young lord of the central capital's Yang family, what kind of noble identity was this? The so-called first-class families were nothing in front of the central capital's 8 great families. Not to mention, the Yang family was the leader of the 8 great families. Its status was even more respected. Perhaps the Yang family young lord here might become the future patriarch of the Yang family. Now that he was weak, if they tried to make friends with him, they would naturally gain many benefits in the future. Who would dare to offend him? Unconsciously, both Xiangchu and Nansheng restrained their domineering auras and scanned the crowd with dignified eyes. It was as if they had suddenly become much smaller than they were before. On the other hand, the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall all stared at Yang Kai expectantly. They all knew Yang Kai's name, so at this moment, they naturally associated him with the identity of the Yang family young lord, but it was not convenient for them to ask directly, so all of them were looking forward to seeing some clues from his expression. Yang Kai's expression was calm, and there was nothing unusual about him, making them even more suspicious. Xiangchu smiled wryly, cupped his fists and asked, "Who is young Lord Yang?" It wasn't that he didn't know Yang Kai's name, it was just that he subconsciously didn't dare to associate him with the Yang family young lord. Xiangchu now only hoped that the hidden Yang family young lord was in his camp. No one answered his question. Yang Kai let out a strange laugh. Asterisk schwa schwa schwa, asterisk countless eyes gathered on him, and under everyone's watchful eyes, the black flood dragon that had been hovering above his head suddenly swooped down. In the blink of an eye, the 20 to 30 meter long flood dragon drilled into Yang Kai's body and disappeared. At the same time, the towering evil qi also receded, and what appeared before everyone's eyes was only an ordinary Yuan Qi 6th stage cultivator. The expressions of the Xiang and Nan family people became gloomy. Yang Kai having lost his last hope at this time, they couldn't help but think. Looking up at the sky, the silver blood golden feather eagle was still circling. It let out a sharp cry. Yang Kai put his fingers into his mouth and whistled loudly. As if it had received some kind of order, the circling silver blood golden feather eagle responded cheerfully. It spread its wings and swooped down from a height of several thousand feet. In an instant, it arrived above the crowd. That pair of bright eagle eyes stared vigilantly and hatefully at the 3 people of the Nan family and slowly landed on Yang Kai's shoulder. Folding its wings, the silver blood golden feather eagle screeched at the 3 Nan family members in a threatening manner. The faces of the Nan family and Xiang family members suddenly paled, Xiangchu's face twitching slightly as he stared at Yang Kai, seemingly unable to believe his own eyes. The unique silver blood golden feather eagle of the Yang family had now landed on Yang Kai's shoulder. There was no need to think too much about Yang Kai's true identity. The Hu sisters stared at Yang Kai without blinking, as if they had just met him. Their beautiful eyes were filled with splendor. The bodies of Xie Rong and Li Fu of Soaring Rainbow Court went limp. He fell limply to the ground. Their 2 sects had racked their brains to curry favor with Xiangchu, aiding him in his evil deeds and slandering Yang Kai. Never had they expected to pick up a sesame seed and throw away a watermelon, offending a person even Xiangchu didn't dare to offend. This was the true definition of having eyes but failing to see, short-sighted. Both of their sects had suffered heavy casualties, and each of them had lost an immortal ascension boundary elder to Yang Kai, so they had hoped that Xiangchu would avenge them. While they were at it, they could also hug the big tree that was the Xiang family, but now, everything had been in vain. Forget about revenge, now that they had offended the Yang family's young lord, whether they could survive was another matter altogether. No wonder he said the price of offending him was not something their sects could afford. They really couldn't afford it. Young Master Yang? Xiangchu looked at Yang Kai awkwardly, his palms wet with sweat, but he had no choice but to brace himself and ask. Nansheng opened his mouth, his heart filled with regret. This time, he had really been caught in an unexpected disaster. He had just passed by this place on his way back to the Nan family and had not expected to cause such a big trouble. If he had known this would happen, why would he have come here to watch the fun? He could have just ridden his cloud-treading colt back to the Nan family. Faced with Xiangchu's inquiry, Yang Kai just glanced at him faintly before concentrating on combing the feathers of the silver blood golden feather eagle perched on his shoulder. This fifth-order flying monster beast was quite special. Its feathers seemed to be made of pure gold, and after being raised by the Yang family for so many years, it had been taken care of very well. Each of its feathers was as sharp as a knife, and its hardness and sharpness were not inferior to an ordinary Earth-grade mid-rank artifact. Coupled with its hook-like beak and sharp claws, an average Yuan-Chi realm cultivator may not be its opponent. Only a cultivator at the 6th or 7th stage of Yuan-Chi or above would be able to defeat it. Yang Kai did not speak, so even though Xiangchu was full of grievances and resentment, he did not dare show the slightest bit of it. Cupping his fists, he stood there with a cautious expression on his face. Nansheng's face turned red as he thickened his face and said, "Young Master Yang, this Nan had eyes but failed to see. What happened just now was this Nan's fault. I hope young Master Yang will not take it to heart." Hu Jiao couldn't help but smile contemptuously. Just now, Nansheng had been so overbearing and arrogant, facing more than a dozen second-class sect disciples and not allowing them to resist. But now, in front of the young lord of a super force, his performance was so humble that he almost knelt down and kowtowed to Yang Kai. It was as if he was a completely different person, and the difference in attitude was so great that it made people raise their eyebrows. When the laughter reached Nansheng's ears, it made him feel even more uncomfortable. His expression also changed as he forced a smile and said, "Young lady, please don't take offense. This Nan apologizes to you." Hu Jiao sneered and turned her face away, not wanting to look at this realistic face. The 4 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Nan and Xiang family also had no choice but to put down their faces and cup their fists. "Young Master Yang, please forgive us for our rudeness just now." Yang Kai let out a light breath and glanced over at them indifferently, chuckling lightly, "It's not your fault you didn't know." Hearing him say this, the Xiang clan and Nan clan members were all delighted. As long as Yang Kai didn't pursue today's matter, everything would be fine. On top of that, the Yang family's inheritance war was about to begin, so Yang Kai, as the Yang family's young lord, naturally needed to gather support and gather his supporters in order to win the position of the next patriarch. The Xiang and Nan families were both first-class families. With such powerful support, as long as Yang Kai wanted to win in the inheritance war, he would definitely try to win them over. As the saying goes, those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. Yang Kai hadn't suffered any losses from today's events, so naturally, he was willing to let it go. Perhaps today, he would even be able to form a good relationship with the Yang family young lord, creating a story of friendship without discord. Thinking about all kinds of possibilities, Xiangchu and Nansheng both wore joyful and expectant expressions. Just as they were celebrating though, the silver blood golden feather eagle on Yang Kai's shoulder suddenly let out a shrill cry, as if it had been injured, flapping its wings and flying high into the sky. "What happened?" Xiangchu asked eagerly, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he stared blankly at Yang Kai, a look of confusion filling his face. The same was true for everyone else. What they saw was Yang Kai holding 2 golden feathers in his hand. These 2 feathers gleamed with a golden light, as if they were finely ground blades, the same length and shape. Obviously, they had been plucked from the silver blood golden feather eagle. No wonder the eagle had suddenly flown up in fright. After plucking the feathers, Yang Kai didn't even bother to look at them and simply threw them to the ground. "Young Master Yang, what is the meaning of this?" Nansheng was confused as he frowned at Yang Kai. This silver blood golden feather eagle was extremely handsome and had an excellent appearance. On top of that, it was a rare and precious exotic beast and was the one who had found Yang Kai. Even if Yang Kai didn't like it, He wouldn't suddenly attack it. What is he doing? Nansheng couldn't understand. Xiangchu, on the other hand, was much more sensitive than Nansheng. Looking at the 2 golden feathers in Yang Kai's hand, he had a bad feeling about this, but before he could think clearly, 2 figures had already approached them. The speed of these 2 people was extremely fast and their bodies were shrouded in a brilliant light. At a glance, it was obvious that their strength wasn't low. The distance of a few thousand meters was crossed in the blink of an eye. The newcomers were a man and a woman. The man was tall and sturdy with a cold expression. There was a long scar on his face that ran from left to right like an earthworm. It was sinister on the bridge of his nose. His aura was as sharp as a blade, and his murderous aura was awe-inspiring. With one look, one could tell that he was a veteran. The woman was in her prime with a graceful figure. It was impossible to tell how old she was, but she was dignified and beautiful. Her pair of phoenix eyes flashed with a sharp light, but her oval face was expressionless and indifferent. Both men and women were immortal ascension boundary masters, but the feeling they gave off was much stronger than the masters from the Xiang and Nan families. The moment they saw them, everyone couldn't help comparing them to the 4 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Nan and Xiang families, but all of them came to the same conclusion. In a one-on-one fight, none of the 4 immortal ascension boundary masters were a match for this man and woman. Each of the Yang family's silver blood golden feather eagles was followed by a Yang family master so that once they found a Yang family young lord, they could be escorted home. The 2 people in front of them had obviously followed the silver blood golden feather eagles all the way here. Both of them had a jade token hanging from their waists with a blood-red Yang character written on it. Yang family blood warriors. Fong Lao couldn't help muttering. The Yang family blood warriors had served the Yang family for generations and were extremely loyal to it. Each one of them had outstanding talent and had been trained since childhood. A lot of manpower, material, and financial resources had been spent on their growth. Their origins may not be as noble as those of the young lords and young ladies, but the achievements they could achieve were definitely not lower. The Yang family had an above immortal ascension boundary grand elder who was a blood warrior. But now, the Yang family treated him as an honored guest. Even if a direct descendant saw him, they would have to kowtow to him. Therefore, the Yang family blood warriors also represented a powerful combat strength. All of the blood warriors had the ability to fight above their realm and were basically invincible in the same realm. What was most valuable was their loyalty. For the sake of the Yang family, they were willing to sacrifice everything. After all, from a young age, the Yang family had instilled in them the ideology of family supremacy. In order to train them, the Yang family had paid a great price. Chapter 364. This was indeed the unique silver blood golden feather eagle of the Yang family. Yang Kai really was a Yang family young lord. Where is the young lord? The middle-aged man's hawk-like eyes scanned the crowd. His expression didn't change at all because of the presence of the Xiang and Nan families. He simply raised his voice and asked. When he asked this question, the woman also glanced around, trying to find her young lord in the crowd. Asterisk schwa schwa schwa. Asterisk almost everyone's eyes were fixed on Yang Kai. The next moment, the 2 blood warriors also cast their eyes over, and after seeing Yang Kai's face and judging his age and cultivation, their expressions suddenly became suspicious. As blood warriors, they had naturally seen many of the Yang family's young lords. Even if they had never interacted with them, they had at least seen them a few times. The 2 of them had already guessed before coming here that using the silver blood golden feather eagle, they could easily find their young lord's residence. If he looked familiar, they would be able to determine his identity. However, when they saw Yang Kai, the 2 of them couldn't help feeling a sense of unfamiliarity. Among the Yang family's young lords who had gone out for life experience, how could they be so young? Moreover, this appearance. They hadn't seen him before. It was no wonder they were suspicious. When Yang Kai left home, he was only 12 or 13 years old and was just an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate. Now that more than 5 years had passed, Yang Kai had naturally changed a lot. However, the woman's observation was more detailed, and after a long time, she suddenly exclaimed, "Little Lord." The middle-aged man's eyes couldn't help narrowing as he stared at Yang Kai. His heart couldn't help feeling a storm. Little Lord. When he was dismissed, he was the youngest young lord, the one under the command of Fourth Master Yang. But wasn't the little lord congenitally deficient and unable to cultivate? When they left the Yang family this time, the blood warriors had been discussing among themselves. If they were to see the little lord, they would have to strictly guard him because it was very likely that the little lord was just an ordinary person. The Yang family had many enemies, so perhaps this time someone would take advantage of this opportunity to assassinate these scattered young lords. Now that they looked at him again, how could this young man be an ordinary person? He was clearly a cultivator of Yuan Qi state level 6. Although this level of cultivation could not be considered to be top-notch, it was still not weak. The middle-aged man and the woman looked at each other. Then, with a flash of their bodies, they suddenly appeared in front of Yang Kai, and an invisible force spread out in all directions. Everyone around Yang Kai was pushed a few dozen feet away. The domineering and overbearing nature of the Yang family was clear to see. The Hu sisters retreated again and couldn't help but pout in anger. "They're both my friends, go easy on them." Yang Kai looked at the two of them indifferently. The middle-aged man and the woman looked calm, as if they didn't care about him at all. Before confirming the true identity of Yang Kai, the blood warriors didn't treat anyone kindly. "Are you really the young master?" The middle-aged man frowned as he looked at Yang Kai and asked with uncertainty. Yang Kai nodded slightly. He flicked his finger and cut a small wound. He lifted his finger and a few drops of blood immediately dripped down. The woman reacted quickly. She quickly took out a jade pendant and respectfully held it with both hands, using it to receive the drops of blood. When the blood fell into the jade pendant, it seemed to be swallowed up and disappeared in an instant. The originally ordinary jade pendant, after absorbing the blood, suddenly exuded a brilliant light. Only a direct descendant of the Yang family could activate the mysterious light in this jade pendant. Confirmed. The middle-aged man and woman glanced at each other and quickly knelt on the ground. Blood warrior, Tu Feng. Blood warrior, Tang Yuxian, greets the little lord. Stand up. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian quickly stood up. When they looked at Yang Kai again, there was a great deal of respect and dignity in their eyes. No longer any of their previous carelessness. If it were any other young lord who had reached the Yuan Qi 6th stage at this moment, they wouldn't have shown such a change. But the little lord was different. Because the fourth Master Yang had not yet recovered from his injuries, the little lord had been born with a congenital deficiency. For more than 10 years in the Yang family, he had always been an ordinary person without the strength to truss a chicken, but now he had actually grown to such a level. In just 5 years, he had cultivated to the Yuan Qi 6th stage. This kind of speed, even Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian couldn't help but sigh, so how could they still underestimate him? Moreover, this little lord's position at this moment was quite dangerous. This was the front line of the war with the ash-gray cloud evil land. As a Yang family young lord, he actually dared to take such a risk and come here. This kind of mentality and courage was obviously not something an ordinary person could possess. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian thought they had taken on a boring job this time, but they hadn't expected to be shocked by the little lord's strength. The direct descendants of the Yang family were all crazy masters. They couldn't be looked at with normal eyes. For a moment, the two of them couldn't help admiring him. After looking at Yang Kai for a while, Tu Feng retracted his gaze and asked, "Who is in charge of this place?" Xiang Chu's scalp went numb as he quickly stepped forward, smiled bitterly, and cupped his fists, replying to Senior, "This place is managed by my Xiang family." Xiang family? Tu Feng frowned and nodded slightly. The decisive battle was finished 2 days ago, so there should be nothing left to do here, right? If there is nothing else, we'll take the little lord away. If there is something you need, just give us the order and we'll help you on behalf of the little lord. I wouldn't dare. Xiang Chu was now eager to send these Yang family people far away, so how could he dare to say anything else, quickly saying, "There is nothing left to do here, we're just about to go back, Senior, please help yourself." Tu Feng gave him a look that said, "You're quite sensible, quite satisfied." Just as he was about to lead Yang Kai away, his eyes suddenly narrowed and a murderous aura burst out from his body. Tang Yuxian's pretty face also went cold as she stared towards the ground. The Xiang family and Nan family people didn't know what had happened, but all of them were frightened and frightened. Heh. Tu Feng suddenly chuckled, the scars on his face becoming more and more terrifying. Muttering in a cold tone, "I was wondering why the eagle was so frightened, hovering in the sky without landing, so that's what happened." The Xiang family and Nan family people were both shocked. Xiang Chu also raised his head. Staring at Yang Kai in horror, only now did he finally react. Yang Kai had just plucked 2 of the silver blood golden feather eagle's feathers and threw them on the ground. This was clearly an attempt to frame someone else. Who dared to hit my Yang family's eagle? Tang Yuxian's face was as cold as ice, her beautiful eyes flashing a murderous intent as she swept her eyes over the Nan family and Xiang family people, coldly shouting, "Stand up." Tu Feng also sneered, "The Yang family's silver blood golden feather eagle, each one of them is extremely precious and has not been seen for a long time, yet someone actually dares to have ideas about it. Interesting, interesting." Senior. Xiang Chu's forehead was dripping with cold sweat, seemingly only now realizing the viciousness of Yang Kai's actions. "I had eyes but failed to recognize the silver blood golden feather eagle in time. It was indeed abrupt, but I didn't hurt it." "Didn't recognize it?" Tu Feng coldly snorted, "What's the point of having eyes?" Tang Yuxian also responded aggressively, "You didn't hurt it? Then what's the matter with these 2 feathers?" This. Xiang Chu was suddenly speechless. He couldn't just say that the Yang family's little lord had plucked these feathers himself and threw them on the ground. Regardless of whether they believed him or not. It was a fact that they had attacked the silver blood golden feather eagle. There were so many pairs of eyes watching. The Yang family was famous for being domineering and arrogant. How could they be easily dealt with after their eagle was injured? Seeing the faces of the Xiang and Nan family masters all pale and filled with righteous indignation, they couldn't help feeling bitter. All of them looked like they had lost their parents, while the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall couldn't help feeling happy. Sure enough, retribution for retribution, what goes around comes around. Just now, they had joined forces with Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court to frame Yang Kai, but now the tables had completely turned. It was as if all the injustice and slander they had just inflicted on Yang Kai had been completely borne by them. Xiang Chu still wanted to defend himself, but Su Lao slowly shook his head at him. Defending himself in front of the Yang family was tantamount to playing a lute to a cow. It was completely useless. With a pale face, Su Lao said, "This matter is our fault, friend. Please explain yourself. What's the rules of the martial world?" Tu Feng sneered. The 4 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters all paled. After a moment, all of them sighed deeply, knowing that they had kicked an iron plate this time. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind Nansheng stepped forward and glanced at each other, their faces filled with sadness, immediately stretching out their fingers and condensing their chi into a blade. The 2 Nan family masters' eyes filled with sadness, their bodies couldn't help trembling slightly. Hesitating, Tu Feng stared at them coldly, his yuan qi surging unscrupulously. Tang Yuxian's pretty face also wore a cold expression, as if she was dissatisfied, she would immediately begin a slaughter. Ta! A faint sigh came out from the mouths of the 2 masters, both of them closing their eyes, a trace of pain and despair filling their faces. The yuan qi blade slashed down, and with a flash of light, the 2 masters' arms flew off from their elbows, blood gushing out. With a muffled groan, the faces of the 2 masters instantly turned pale, quickly circulating their secret arts to stop the flow of blood, one of them trembling as he stared at Tu Feng and asked, "Is this enough?" All the disciples from the second-class sects were horrified. Although they had long heard that the Yang family was powerful and domineering, none of them had expected it to be so monstrous. Just a single question from this blood warrior had forced 2 masters to cripple their own arms. These were 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th or 8th stage masters. If they were placed in their sects, they would definitely be elders or protectors, perhaps even comparable to the sect master. But now, they had been bullied like this without daring to resist. It wasn't until this moment that the second-class sects truly understood what the Yang family was, what the head of the 8 great families was. This kind of heritage and momentum was something their sects simply couldn't compare with. Tu Feng coldly said, "Only 2 people? From what I can see, there are 4 masters here." The 2 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Xiang family were suddenly stunned. Fang Lao and Su Lao of the Xiang family really hadn't attacked the silver blood golden feather eagle just now, and Su Lao had even stopped the actions of the 3 Nin family elders, but the Yang family blood warrior obviously wasn't willing to give up so easily. "We didn't attack that eagle." Su Lao's forehead oozed cold sweat as he hurriedly tried to defend himself. Severing one's own arm was not a minor injury. After losing an arm, a master's strength would drop by at least 20%, possibly even more, which was equivalent to becoming a half-cripple in the future. Tu Feng didn't seem to hear him at all, staring at him and Fang Lao coldly. "An arm or your life, choose." Fang Lao and Su Lao's expressions changed greatly. They hadn't expected Tu Feng to be so unreasonable. "I'll give you 3 breaths of time." Tu Feng continued to pressure them. Su Lao and Fang Lao's eyes suddenly dimmed as they glanced at each other, both shaking their heads and smiling bitterly. "2 elders, this Xiang Chu owes you this much?" Xiang Chu took a deep breath, filled with grief and indignation. What else could these 2 masters say? Their young lord was right next to them, and although they knew that it was impossible for a blood warrior to kill the heir of a first-class family for no reason, killing the 2 of them wasn't a big problem. "We admit defeat." Su Lao and Fang Lao's expressions became gloomy, no longer saying anything. Just like the other 2, they gathered their yuan qi, condensed it into a blade, and cut off one of their arms. "Is that okay?" Su Lao asked with a pale face. "Is there no one else?" Tu Feng asked, his eyes sweeping across the other side like a hawk. Nanxing felt uncomfortable being stared at and couldn't help shrinking his neck. Yang Kai grinned at him. Nanxing's face also went white. Nanxing was the first one to attack the silver blood golden feather eagle. The Xiang family's Su Lao and Fang Lao were only implicated. It looks like there's still someone else. Tu Feng saw Nanxing's guilty and panicked expression and knew that this matter was related to him, so he shouted, "Do you want me to do it myself?" The faces of the 4 masters from the Nan family and Xiang family changed again. The blood warrior had bullied them and ordered them to cut off one of their arms. They had nothing to say, nor did they have the ability to resist. But now that Tu Feng had actually set his sights on Nanxing, the situation was completely different. Nanxing was the young lord of a first-class family and the successor of the Nan family. If he really lost one of his arms here, it wouldn't be a trivial matter. Therefore, even though the 4 immortal ascension boundary masters knew the strength of the blood warrior, they couldn't help glaring at Tu Feng with resentment and vigilance, secretly circulating their yuan qi. If they continued to be pressured, there was bound to be a great battle. Yang Kai suddenly chuckled. "Young Lord Nan's identity is honorable, there's no need to cut off one of his arms." Tu Feng's eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. On the other hand, Nanxing glanced towards Yang Kai with a look of surprise and gratitude, obviously not having expected this young man would actually let him go. "Just cut off 2 of your fingers." Yang Kai's smile faded as he said. The gratitude in Nanxing's eyes quickly faded, replaced by a look of extreme resentment. "Good, since the little lord says so, you can cut off 2 of your own fingers." Tu Feng nodded, seemingly giving Nanxing a great gift. "Good." Nanxing was also a decisive person. Hearing this, he didn't waste any more time, pulling out a dagger from his waist, and with a flash of light, 2 of his fingers fell to the ground. During this entire process, he didn't even bat an eyelid. "I'll remember you." Nanxing grit his teeth and glared at Yang Kai coldly, muttering under his breath. Yang Kai chuckled and said, "Young Lord Nan, this is just a punishment for injuring it. Have you forgotten that there is still a debt between us that has yet to be settled?" Nanxing's complexion changed greatly as he suddenly went silent. Chapter 365. Yang Kai really still had grievances with them. Just now, Xiangchu and Nanxing had wanted to kill Yang Kai, and if it weren't for the timely arrival of the golden feather eagle, they would have already started fighting. Yang Kai clearly didn't want to resolve his grievances so easily, so he had plucked the eagle's feathers and retaliated on the spot. Listening to him say this, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both wore calm expressions, not showing the slightest surprise, as if they had already noticed the tense atmosphere here. However, both of them remained silent, staring curiously at Yang Kai, wondering what he was going to do. The Blood Warrior's mission this time was only to safely bring back the Yang family's direct descendants. There were no other instructions. Just now, they had forced the Nan and Xiang family masters to retreat only because the golden feather eagle had been injured. Now, if Yang Kai wanted to find trouble with these people, that was Yang Kai's business. The two Blood Warriors wouldn't intervene. They were loyal to the Yang family, not Yang Kai. In other words, Yang Kai didn't have the qualifications or strength to order them to do anything. Only when his life was in danger would the two Blood Warriors act. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian suddenly felt that this time, they had received the Little Lord. Quite interesting. Both of them were members of the Yang family, so they were naturally arrogant and domineering. Yang Kai's aggressive and unrelenting attitude was clearly to their liking. For a moment, both of them were looking forward to it. Xiangchu laughed dryly. What does young Master Yang want us to do? His fist wasn't as big as his opponent's, so Xiangchu had no choice but to tuck his tail between his legs. Su Lao also endured the heart-wrenching pain and said with a frown, "We admit defeat this time. However, as the saying goes, it is better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Having one more friend is always better than having one more enemy. Young Master Yang, you also want to participate in the inheritance war? Please reconsider." Yang Kai's expression became cold as he coldly snorted, "Reconsider? Ridiculous." As soon as his voice fell, two blood-red petals suddenly flew out from his body. A floral fragrance wafted out, lingering around the tip of everyone's nose. 1,000 blossoming blood begonia. The petals fluttered in the air, suddenly transforming into two red lights that flashed and disappeared. Two muffled groans rang out as Xia Rong and soaring rainbow quartz Li Fu fell to the ground, their vitality drained away. Everyone was in an uproar. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian stared at Yang Kai in amazement while the faces of the Nan and Xiang family members all changed. No one seemed to have expected this. He actually dared to kill someone in front of so many people. As soon as Xia Rong and Li Fu died, the remaining members of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court all collapsed to the ground, looking at Yang Kai in horror, a chill running down their spines. The two petals flickered one after another. A series of muffled sounds rang out, and all the disciples of the Thunderlight Court and Soaring Rainbow Court died in a short span of 10 breaths of time. The ground was littered with corpses. Xiangchu and Nanxing's breathing suddenly stagnated as they involuntarily gulped. Within 3 months. I want to see your sincerity in the central capital, otherwise, I don't mind destroying the prestige of a first-class family. Yang Kai's eyes were cold. He suddenly chuckled, "You can keep your lives for now." Xiangchu's face suddenly became extremely ugly, a burst of bitter taste spreading in his mouth. Nanxing was even more furious, covering the wound on his hand as he glared at Yang Kai. After a long time, Xiangchu finally managed to squeeze out a forced smile, "Many thanks. Let's go." With a wave of his hand, Xiangchu led the group away. "Those 3 cloud-treading colts are mine." Yang Kai glanced over at the 3 monster beasts that the Nan family had just mounted and said faintly. Nanxing, who had already mounted his mount, couldn't help taking a deep breath when he heard this and quickly jumped back down, quickly being dragged away by the 2 Immortal Ascension boundary masters beside him. Tang Yuxian pursed her lips and stared at Yang Kai with a funny expression, thinking that this little lord of hers seemed to be a child who hadn't grown up yet, always acting like a bully. Opening her mouth, she was about to speak when Tu Feng slowly shook his head at her. "Little lord, Yu Xian and I will wait for you over there." Tu Feng's appearance was rough, but his mind was quite sharp. Knowing that Yang Kai still had something to say to his friends, He left with Tang Yuxian first. Yang Kai nodded. After everyone had left, leaving behind only the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall, Yang Kai discovered that these people were all looking at him strangely. Many of these people's eyes were filled with awe, but to Yang Kai's relief, the Hu sisters and Fang Ziki didn't look at him in such a way. Not only that, Hu Jiao'er's beautiful eyes also flashed a hint of hatred. Do you have any questions? Yang Kai rubbed his nose and looked towards the Hu sisters. Hu Mei-er pursed her lips and wanted to ask something but didn't. Hu Jiao'er, on the other hand, coldly said, "No." Yang Kai couldn't help but ask, "You really don't?" "No means no, I already know what I need to know, what else do you need to ask?" Hu Jiao'er glared at him fiercely before grabbing her sister's hand and saying, "Come on, let's go home." Hu Mei-er smiled apologetically to Yang Kai before quickly catching up with her sister's pace. Guan Qi cupped his fists towards Yang Kai and also let out a hollow laugh before leading the others away. Fang Ziki stayed behind and asked, "Brother Yang, is the inheritance war fun?" "I don't know, I've never tried it before." Yang Kai shook his head. "Do you want to participate?" Fang Ziki raised his brow and asked. "As long as one has a certain level of strength, they must participate, it's not up to me." Yang Kai nodded. "Interesting, I'll definitely visit you in the central capital some other day." Fang Ziki laughed. "I'll be waiting." Yang Kai also smiled. A gust of wind blew through Yang Kai's black hair. Standing in place, Yang Kai watched the dozen or so people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall gradually disappear into the distance. Among the crowd, there were two women who from time to time glanced back until they disappeared from sight. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian appeared beside Yang Kai like ghosts and waited quietly. "I'm going to retreat for a while. Wait for me for a while." Yang Kai ordered lightly before diving into the camp and finding a fairly spacious house. Entering it, Tang Yuxian responded in a daze. After a long time, Tang Yuxian's brow furrowed slightly. "Retreat? Is the little lord about to break through?" "There are some signs." Tu Feng nodded slightly. Agreeing with Tang Yuxian's opinion, his yuan qi is fluctuating a bit. It is indeed a sign of a breakthrough. It seems that before we came here, he experienced a great battle. If it weren't for this reason, how could he suddenly break through without warning? Tu Feng smiled faintly, looking up at the golden feather eagle in the sky. "Yuxian, do you think the little lord is a bit soft-hearted?" Tang Yuxian tilted her head and looked at Tu Feng. "I just think he's still a child. It's inevitable that his methods would be softer." Tu Feng slowly shook his head and quickly said, "Young family people. Even if he's a child, don't underestimate him. Yuxian, you've been in the Yang family for so many years, how can you still be so naive? This little lord is not as simple as you think." "What do you mean?" Tang Yuxian suddenly became interested. "You can see that he has grievances with the Xiang and Nen families, right?" Tang Yuxian chuckled lightly. "I'm not blind, naturally I can see it. Moreover, their grievances don't seem to be shallow. What do you think the little lord should do?" "Kill him." Tang Yuxian said lightly. "He should try to win them over. The inheritance war needs such allies. By doing this, he has offended so many people while also releasing a tiger back to the mountain. I'm afraid the Xiang and Nen families will become his enemies in the future." "That's why I said you were too naive." Tu Feng grinned. "Those two young men can't be killed. Both of them are the next patriarchs of the Xiang and Nan families. If we really kill them, the little lord will also be in trouble. He doesn't have enough power right now to deal with such troubles. Not to mention he doesn't have the ability to kill their young masters under the noses of 4 immortal ascension boundary masters. Then we should win them over." Tang Yuxian spat disdainfully. "We've already offended them, what's the point of winning them over? Even if we win them over, I'm afraid the 2 young masters will still be disloyal, so it's better to go down this dark road and offend them as much as possible while scraping as many benefits from them as possible." Tu Feng narrowed his eyes. "Some people need to be beaten until they're afraid, until they tremble at the sight of you, then they won't be able to resist. But the little lord obviously doesn't have the means or strength to do so. The little lord really can't do this. After all, he's still young, but he should have such intentions towards the Xiang and Nen families, otherwise he wouldn't have acted so domineering. I'd like to see how he performs in the inheritance war. Tang Yuxian suddenly became puzzled. Why are you so interested in him? Tu Feng chuckled, reaching out his hand and grabbing the 2 golden feathers on the ground. Handing one of them to Tang Yuxian, Tu Feng said, "These 2 feathers weren't knocked off at all." Tang Yuxian stared at them and couldn't help feeling surprised. They were plucked off? Who plucked them? Who else could it be? Tang Yuxian glanced towards the spot where Yang Kai was in seclusion and exclaimed, "So insidious? He's actually using us as bait." After saying so, she stared at Tu Feng and asked, "Since you already saw through it, why did you let him do as he pleased? Why would I expose him on the spot?" Tu Feng rolled his eyes. "No matter what, he's still a young lord of the Yang family. How could I do something that would cause him to lose face? Smelly brat, he's really insidious." Tang Yuxian grit her teeth. Being taken advantage of like this, Tang Yuxian couldn't help feeling somewhat unconvinced. She was an immortal ascension boundary master, yet she couldn't even see through such a trick. It was really a bit shameful. Tu Feng frowned. "This time, we don't know if the blood warriors will be required to participate in the inheritance war. If they do, the 2 of us will need to find a trustworthy and powerful young lord to follow. You know, in the inheritance war, the consequences of standing on the wrong side are very serious." "Do you want to follow him?" Tang Yuxian frowned. "I don't have such an idea for the time being. We've only just met him, so it's still not too bad. Let's see how he performs on the road." Heh, the Yang family's unwritten rules. On the way home, not only are the young lords trying to conquer us, we're also observing them to see if they're worth following. "I'll do as you say." Tang Yuxian nodded. After saying so, she smiled charmingly. "I'll have to carefully keep my eyes open. I can't be used by him again." Ha! Tu Feng laughed loudly. Chapter 366. Yang Kai walked out in high spirits. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian quickly stepped forward and saluted, carefully examining him and discovering that he had indeed broken through to the Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage. The 2 blood warriors nodded secretly, also feeling some admiration in their hearts. Being able to break through so quickly after the great battle, this little lord's aptitude should not be bad. What was strange though was that after more than a decade in the Yang family, why was he just an ordinary person? What had happened to him in the past few years that allowed him to achieve what he had now in one fell swoop? Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian stared at Yang Kai with different expressions on their faces, seemingly waiting for something. "What happened to the Yang family? Why did you call us back so early this time?" Yang Kai frowned and asked the 2. Tu Feng's face was a little gloomy as he replied, "The patriarch was injured. During the decisive battle with the Ash-Gray Cloud Evil Lands Masters, the patriarch was injured by the profound Een Ghost King and the annihilating Poison King. Poison Qi and Ghost Qi entered his body at the same time. Although he was treated in time and his life was saved, the elders of the family said that the situation was not optimistic, so we must determine the next patriarch as soon as possible." The patriarch was injured? Yang Kai was stunned. The current patriarch of the Yang family should be Yang Kai's great-uncle, Yang Yinghao. His strength was not low, but such a character had actually been injured during the Great Battle, and it seemed that his injuries were not light. Otherwise, the patriarch would not have been so anxious to call back the Yang family's direct descendants and start the inheritance war. "I understand." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Regarding the people and matters of the family, Yang Kai didn't know much about the Yang family, and even his uncles had only met a few times. Besides his own parents, Yang Kai didn't have much affection for the other members of the Yang family. This was also the case for the other direct descendants of the Yang family. The previous generation's direct descendants had only returned to the family after 10 years of experience outside, and during the inheritance war, they had not shown any mercy to their brothers, so the bond between the Yang family members was very thin. It wasn't as deep as the other families. Seeing his calm reaction, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian also didn't show much surprise. The two of them had been in the Yang family for so long, so they naturally understood the temperament of the Yang family. Young master, Tu Feng asked, if there is nothing else, let's return to the Yang family first. Yang Kai's brow furrowed as he asked, is there a deadline set by the family? Tu Feng slowly shook his head. Furthermore, I reckon that you are the first young master to be found. 2 days ago, the golden feather eagle was released. Yu Xian and I chased you all the way here, and we were very lucky to run into you. The others are probably still searching with the golden feather eagles. That's good. Yang Kai smiled faintly. Young master, do you still have something to do? Yes. I want to go back to the sect. Yang Kai nodded. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian glanced at each other and couldn't help marveling. The cuckoo bird Yang family's direct disciples were all raised in the wild. They hid their identities and lived in other sections. After 10 years, these young lords would secretly leave the sect, not wanting to let their sect elders or brothers and sisters know about it. After all, after living there for so many years, even if they were made of wood, they would still have some feelings. Deceiving the sect like this would cause them to feel guilty. But this young man in front of them not only didn't sneak away, he actually wanted to go back. This was quite interesting. Yang Kai didn't know how to explain this to his sect elders. Tang Yuxian suddenly became curious and asked, what is the name of young master's sect? Yang Kai chuckled and glanced over at her, only to see her grinning and looking expectantly at him, seemingly wanting to inquire about the situation. It's better if I don't say. Tang Yuxian was startled, not quite understanding what he meant. However, as a blood warrior, she didn't ask any more questions, only faintly feeling that this young lord wasn't easy to deal with. Let's go. Yang Kai had already jumped onto the cloud-treading colt and shouted towards her and Tu Feng. The two blood warriors glanced at each other before leaping onto the cloud-treading colts as well. Although they were both immortal ascension boundary masters and their flying speed was quite fast, since they had cloud-treading colts, they were naturally happy to save some energy and yuan qi. The 3 cloud-treading colts flew as fast as lightning. Above their heads, the silver blood golden feather eagle followed, letting out a clear cry from time to time. From here to High Heaven Pavilion was at least 10,000 kilometers away. Even riding a cloud-treading colt would take 2 to 3 days to reach it. However, Yang Kai didn't go at full speed, instead maintaining a moderate speed. The Yang family's unwritten rule was one that Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian knew, but how could Yang Kai not know? Along the way, his performance would affect the choices of these 2 blood warriors in the future. Participating in the inheritance war wasn't just about the strength of the Yang family young lords. It could even be said that one's own strength was the least important aspect. What mattered in the inheritance war was how much support a young lord could gather and how many forces would bow their heads. The more support a young lord could gather and the more forces would bow their heads, the more it would show the young lord's connections and means, allowing him to sit in the Yang family patriarch's position. The Yang family was the head of the 8 great families, so what it needed was connections and means. Yang Kai could be said to be poor right now, so naturally he was very interested in these 2 blood warriors who had come to escort him home. If he could convince them on the road, it would be equivalent to having 2 powerful immortal ascension boundary helpers on his way home. Therefore, on this road he couldn't go too fast. If he went too fast, even if Yang Kai had all kinds of means, he wouldn't have enough time to use them, but he also couldn't go too slow, otherwise he would appear lazy. Yang Kai led the way while Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian followed without complaint. In one day they traveled 2,000 kilometers, leisurely. After 3 days, they had only covered half of the distance. At night, the 3 stopped to rest. Tu Feng went out to hunt while Tang Yuxian searched for dry wood nearby. A bonfire was lit. After the bonfire was lit, Tu Feng also returned with a full harvest. The 2 of them worked together to clean the meat in a nearby stream before returning and roasting it over the fire. While the 2 of them were busy, Yang Kai was a few dozen meters away, constantly whistling as he teased the silver blood golden feather eagle that had landed on a treetop to rest. Over the past few days, once they stopped to rest, Yang Kai would tease the golden feather eagle like this. But after 3 days, the harvest was minimal. the golden feather eagle seemed to hold a grudge. That day, in order to frame Nanxing and Xiangchu, Yang Kai had plucked 2 of its golden feathers. Even now, the eagle still regarded Yang Kai as its greatest enemy. When Yang Kai approached it slightly, it would cry out and flap its wings fiercely. Even if Yang Kai was a direct descendant of the Yang family, he still couldn't control it. Tang Yuxian spun the roasted meat in her hand. Glancing over at Yang Kai, she couldn't help smiling when she saw that he still hadn't made any progress. Serves him right, Tang Yuxian said softly. Although the silver blood golden feather eagle is only a 5th-order monster beast, its sentience is very high. Don't even think about getting close to it for the rest of your life. Tu Feng also nodded heavily, apparently agreeing with Tang Yuxian's opinion. The little lord should also know this. Why is he still doing such a thankless thing? Tang Yuxian frowned. Tu Feng grinned meaningfully. An ulterior motive isn't in the wine. What do you mean? Tang Yuxian asked curiously. Tu Feng smacked his lips. The little lord is trying to find a way to impress us. You don't understand? Haven't you noticed that our speed these past few days hasn't been very fast? He's just stalling for time. Tang Yuxian was surprised. After thinking about it for a moment, she suddenly felt that what Tu Feng said made sense, glancing over at him with her beautiful eyes. How can you be so meticulous? You've grown so big in vain. Tu Feng chuckled. It's not that I'm meticulous, it's just that the little lord's intentions are too obvious. Even a fool can understand. It seems I said something wrong. What do you think? Tang Yuxian looked at him with a smile, causing Tu Feng to suddenly feel embarrassed. Not bothering to pursue the matter, Tang Yuxian turned to look at Yang Kai and smiled. If he thinks so, he's destined to be disappointed. And don't worry about him, we just need to ensure his safety. Tu Feng grinned, then called out to Yang Kai, Little lord, it's time to eat. Yang Kai nodded and walked back with a calm expression. While eating, Tang Yuxian smiled and turned to Yang Kai and asked, Little lord, how is your progress? Hearing her ask this, Tu Feng quickly winked at her, indicating that she shouldn't meddle in Yang Kai's affairs. Yang Kai hadn't made any progress. If she asked, wouldn't that be embarrassing the young lord? In fact, Tang Yuxian was also being kind and wanted to remind Yang Kai not to waste his efforts, lest the greater his expectations, the greater his disappointment. Young people like to show off was understandable. Unexpectedly, after hearing her question, Yang Kai actually smiled faintly and replied casually while eating, Almost, I should be able to eliminate its hostility by tomorrow. Tang Yuxian and Tu Feng suddenly froze and stared at Yang Kai dumbfoundedly, not knowing what to say. How is it almost? Isn't it obvious he's still far from it? Moreover, how could he be so sure he could eliminate the golden feather eagle's hostility by tomorrow? That monster beast was born to hold grudges. After plucking 2 of its feathers, it would never pay you any mind for the rest of its life. What's wrong? Yang Kai saw their silence and couldn't help but ask. Nothing. Tu Feng quickly shook his head and smiled. Then I wish the little lord success. Tu Feng's words were quite insincere, but Yang Kai didn't seem to notice and just nodded lightly. Tang Yuxian pursed her lips and suddenly felt a headache coming on. The little lord in front of her was so confident and had made such bold claims. If the golden feather eagle still ignored him tomorrow, wouldn't he lose face? The little lord would lose face, and if he became angry, at this moment, Tang Yuxian even had thoughts of killing the golden feather eagle. As long as the golden feather eagle died tonight, the little lord wouldn't have to feel embarrassed tomorrow. Glancing at Tu Feng, both of them lowered their heads and remained silent, neither of them willing to say another word. Yang Kai carefully observed the situation, and while eating the barbecue, the corners of his mouth slowly rose, blooming into an imperceptible smile. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.